Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Monday morning, the USC commitment sweatshirt comes back on. Three-star defensive lineman Jake Johnson committing to USC. I think the thing that stands out to me the most here, Coach Henderson doing a phenomenal job going down into the state of Texas and landing some big bodies along the line of scrimmage. And I think one of the overarching takeaways, something we've talked about extensively over the last couple of weeks and months, Chad Bowden has come into this program and has put a priority on line of scrimmage players, specifically on the defensive line. This is the seventh line of scrimmage player on the defensive side of the football USC has in the 2026 class. This is the fourth interior defensive lineman that USC has landed in the 2026 cycle. I would remind USC fans, it is only April 7th. We got a long ways to go in terms of USC building this class in 2026, and they are filling it up on the defensive line. And that's something that, you can just kind of put out there, but I think it means something because you look at the blueprint in terms of creating a national championship caliber roster. I believe the blueprint is present. And go look at Ohio State. As much as Ohio State people talked about Jeremiah Smith and Will Howard and Quinshon Judkins, one of the best parts about that Ohio State team was how dominant their defense was, not only from a talent standpoint, but from a depth standpoint too. Go back to Michigan in 2023, dominant defensive line. Go back to Georgia in 2022 and Georgia in 2021. These teams have all had elite defensive lines that not only had, NFL talent, but were extremely deep as well. Chad Bowden is trying to replicate that for USC. And it's a defensive line that was really a disaster in 2024. That should be the strength of this team in 2025. Well, guess what? It's going to be a strength of this team for years to come. Bet on as many big bodies as you can on the defensive line and just put them in the pipeline. And when you have a coach like Coach Henderson, who we all know is one of the best developers of talent in the country, that is the recipe. Fill Coach Henderson's room up with big athletic bodies on the defensive line and go watch him put down a dominant line of scrimmage defense. This is something that we say it all the time. USC is, in my opinion, building it the right way. They're building their roster the right way. This was a defensive line last year that had very little talent, certainly not enough depth. And now you look at it not only in 2025, but in the future and say that these are going to be some of the better defensive lines that you see across the country, at least the way USC is operating on the recruiting trail. Want to get into Jake Johnson, who I think is a fascinating prospect where he is a powerful dude. There is a reason that Coach Henny liked Jake Johnson. And I don't know if he's going to be as much of a stat stuffer as a guy like Tom coming from Mater Dei, but he's going to do the dirty work, and he's going to allow guys like Tom and Jakeem Stewart to have opportunities to really fill up the stats, and you need these kind of players. Excited to get into the film, excited to talk about the player, excited to talk about where USC is in this 2026 cycle. Before we get into it, as always, to the USC fans, and we say it every time, but I cannot tell you how much I mean it. The support y'all have shown as we've talked about the visit weekends, as we've talked about the commitments, it's been next level. It's been amazing. You guys give me the opportunity to do this, and I can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. Without further ado, let's get into Jake Johnson. He is, and a lot of y'all have heard me say this, this is kind of a dirty work kind of guy. He is an extremely powerful defensive lineman that probably doesn't have as much, fluidity in twitch as a guy like Tom. And y'all know how I feel about Tom. Even at 320, I think he is an extremely fluid and twitchy athlete, but he's an extremely powerful guy that you go to the high school film, plays a lot of nose. He plays in an odd front, like three-man front, where he's kind of playing that nose. And what stands out to me about Jake Johnson is he can do the dirty work where I'm holding up to double teams and I'm allowing guys like Jakeem Stewart at the 3-tech, or a guy like Tom at the 3-tech, or a guy like Xavier Griffin at the off-ball linebacker spot. I'm allowing them to have opportunities to really fill up the stat sheet. But he's also a guy that you turn on the film and say, he's also a guy that can give you some juice in the pass rush. Now, I don't think he's going to be as prolific as a pass rusher as a guy like Jakeem Stewart or a guy like Tom, but his ability to go speed to power and just kind of disrupt pockets, it's there. And he's not a guy that's going to go for 10 plus sacks in a year, but he's going to be a disruptive force in the pass rush in the middle of that defensive line. And you see it pretty clearly on the high school film. One of the things that stands out to me is his get off the line of scrimmage is really good. And that seems to be something that Coach Henderson is really targeting. We've talked about it with Jermaine. We talked about it with a guy, excuse me. We talked about it with a guy like Jamian Winfield. These big bodies that also are really good athletes. You see it with Jake Johnson as well. You start firing into the film and say, he's the first one off the line of scrimmage every single time. And then look at the pad level. He's a guy that has powerful hands, a good gut off, and he plays with good pad level and good leverage. And you see the power in his game. I mean, he kind of just does what he wants, kind of working through a double team right here, getting to the quarterback. The other thing here is the motor runs hot. This is a guy that plays to the whistle every single play. And there are some plays where he might not necessarily be immediately in the backfield, but he continues to work and work. That's something that you kind of got to value too on the defensive line. Again, good get off. You see the power in his hands. You see the leverage in which he plays with. It's not the, you turn on the film with a guy like Tom and you see him win in so many different ways. I think that's why I think he's going to be such a special defensive lineman for USC. There's not necessarily that with Jake Johnson. He's a little bit more of a one-dimensional guy where I'm just a really powerful dude that can eat up double teams and collapse pockets. These kind of guys, although not as flashy as Tom, are very important to any defense that you see in the country. Continuing to work through the film, and you see the versatility. He plays a lot of nose, head up on the center, but he'll play a little three-tech too, and he's an athlete, well athletic enough to play the three-tech as well. You see a little bit of bend here in athleticism. That's not normally how he wins, but he can win with a little bit of juice as well. Playing the three-tech here, you see this is the little bit of the motor here. The dude never stops working on the film. Once again at the three-tech, powerful kid. He's kind of just a wrecking ball that doesn't have a ton of pass rush toolkit like a guy like Tom, but a guy that's really disruptive with the power and the get off that he has. Again, pad level, using the hands, and just putting that center right into the lap of the quarterback. You kind of love to see that. Now, you look at USC in 2026, number one class by far in the country. I want to highlight this. I mean, look at where these commitments, we're going to zoom in on the USC wish list, if you will, here. These are the targets that we identified for USC a couple of weeks ago. And we've added some names too. Where are all the red names? Where are all the commitments right now? They're line of scrimmage guys. You got 4 290-plus defensive linemen committed. You got 3 really talented edge rushers committed. You got 3 offensive linemen committed. This is a team that is getting built from the line of scrimmage out. And to me, it's important for 2 reasons. One, kind of how we talked about in the beginning of the episode. Go look at the blueprint. Go look at teams that have either been national championship caliber or have won national championships. It starts with not only being talented, but deep along the line of scrimmage. Well, how do you get deep? You go fill it up with the kids at the high school ranks, because that's a position that if you want to go address in the transfer portal, you can, but it's pretty dang expensive. It's pretty dang hard to do. Go get these guys at the high school ranks. You can address other positions in the transfer portal, but it's really hard to address the line of scrimmage. So go fill it up with these guys at the high school ranks and let them develop within your program. I think to kind of wind this one out, well, we got 2 things to talk about. Number one, when you match up talent acquisition with coaching staff, that's how you get special. 3 years ago when Lincoln Riley took over, the talent acquisition was not where it needed to be. The coaching staff was not where it needed to be, specifically on defense. Last year, the coaching staff was where you needed it to be, but you didn't probably have quite enough talent, specifically in the front 7. Now you're seeing the talent come into this program, specifically in the front 7. You match that up with what I think is one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, one of the best defensive line coaches in the country, and Coach Henderson. You have the talent acquisition right. You have the coaching staff right. If you have those 2 things right, you have talent acquisition, player development right, you're going to be a good football team. And that's kind of where USC is going. Now, the last name I want to talk about real quick, Devon Benjamin on campus for USC. We didn't get a chance to talk about him Friday afternoon because I didn't know he was going to be on campus. Oaks Christian kid, right? Deshaun Rideau just committed to USC on Saturday. Devon Benjamin, difference maker in the secondary. A safety that has unbelievable instincts, kind of like Kamari Ramsey, just a knack for getting his hands on the football, but also a guy that is a lead in man coverage that really could play boundary cornerback. If you want to play boundary cornerback, he could. I like him at safety the most because I want him getting some turnovers, being a ball hawk and safety. But he's a guy that you can ask to play man coverage, which USC, I mean, Kamari Ramsey could last year, but Achille Arnold really couldn't. Bryson Shaw really couldn't. And if you want to be a diverse defense and you want to send different blitz packages, you got to rely on your safeties to hold up in man coverage. Devon Benjamin allows you to do that. And he was on campus. It sounds like USC is really getting into it with him. This was kind of an Oregon lean for a while. There were a lot of Oregon leans a couple months ago that have changed with Chad Bowden taking over. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with the Jake Johnson, dirty work, nasty Texas defensive lineman that probably won't be as productive as a guy like Jakeem Stewart or Tom Tom. But look, if you want Tom Tom and Jakeem Stewart to have the opportunity to be really productive, you got to supplement it with guys like Jake Johnson who want to be nasty and do a little bit of that dirty work. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.